Let's go.
The good thing is we can have a lively discussion also with the participants over voice, so that's good over video.
That we can have.
Yeah.
Exactly, that we can have. Okay, hello everyone. Good evening. I see everybody who dialed in is from Europe, so it's evening for everyone. Thank you for calling in. I thankfully prepared a remark about the number of people in the chat room or in this webinar. Probably due to COVID restrictions, there cannot be more than 10 people in a virtual meeting. So we all compliant, so we can go forward. Well, third time is a charm. We had to reschedule 2 times. So apologies for those who waited. You already proved you're resilient. You have grit. And I guess you will be the only ones who will survive the crisis because you participate in this webinar. We have three outstanding speakers today on a topic of crisis resilience, and it's unfortunately is always a topic which nobody really likes to talk about. If the proverbial shit hits the fan, everybody is running around and telling that's the last time that will happen to us, to me. We will change, and then the next crisis hits again, and it's all over the same stuff all over again. But you can do something about it, and that's what we are talking today. We have 3 outstanding speakers today, and let me say just a couple of words about them, and they will afterwards introduce themselves with a little bit more detail. We start today with Marisa Mendez. She's a psychologist, a coach and teacher, and she specializes in wellness and personal growth, especially in the legal community, which is probably one of the toughest jobs because lawyers are not prone to open up and say they need help. So that's very interesting to hear what Marisa is going to tell us, because a lot of the problems in every crisis are in our heads, and if we don't have the mental capacity to deal with them, then organizational we will fail. And we have Sebastian Hartmann, who is the Global Head of Technology Strategy at KPMG. He will talk about his experience within KPMG with coping with crises and how to prepare an organization like KPMG for crises like the pandemic and financial crisis and so on. And we have Jeroen Zweers, who is a board member of ELTA and the founder of NOUN, a legal tech consultancy, and Dutch Legal Tech, a community in the Netherlands of legal tech enthusiasts. So let's start with Marisa talking about the mental or the psychological angle of crisis resilience. Marisa, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me share with you the presentation. Tell me it is right.
Yes.
Yes,
very good.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for organizing the webinar. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me this space to share my thoughts about resilience in general. And then I will get into what do we know about what my experience is and what I think is important, resilience in the business law industry, okay? I would like to add to your presentation that I'm a former lawyer, so that's why I feel so comfortable in this environment, in this environment. Okay, first of all, we can have a talk. I mean, what do you think is resilience? What do you think? How would you define psychological resilience?
Well, not to panic if the crisis happens.
Not to panic.
Keep calm.
Yeah.
Keep calm.
Yeah. Or not to melt down, not to fall, not to collapse.
Not to fall out, not to collapse.
Yeah, be flexible. Yeah.
Who said be flexible? Jeroen?
Jeroen, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, because I don't know if you noticed, but the previous ones were in a negative way.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we judge are very positive, so
Thanks, we have a positive. No, this is a very important thing, because our brains deal very bad with nots. They try to remove it. So when we say, don't think, if I tell you, don't think in a red elephant with blue ears, what are you thinking about?
The red
The
elephant. Yeah.
The red elephant. Okay. But I really like this not to panic. And I think you will like these drawings I have here. First one, I like definitions, but I really like.
We have to switch, because the slides are only in a very small screen, at least at my.
You can activate the side-by-side modus, Holger.
Okay.
It's
Oh yeah. No,
yeah,
now
that,
I see.
that
Okay.
will help.
Sorry. Go ahead.
We dealt with that. So good definitions, not to panic, not to fall out, and please try to keep calm. I like this. I like definitions. For instance, psychological resilience, according to the American Psychology Association, is the process and the outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experience. How we do that? We do it through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility that allow us to adjust us to the internal and external demands. But I usually find drawings a great way to explain resilient. So here you see this is probably me every morning, planning my life perfectly, meticulously, and then life happens. Something that I really like short definitions. This is a definition from Catherine Parterbrick. She's a professor at Yale University, and she refers to resilience as a process to harness resources to sustain well-being. It's like the opposite what you were seeing. It's like, okay, let's try to focus. One of the most difficult things to do when we panic, when we get into difficulties, and one of the most important ones is to is not to lose ourselves and keep our self-care through those difficulties. Okay, and obviously there are different degrees. I mean, from everyday problems, what we refer as hassle, to high traumatic events. Okay, and I would like to point out at this point, I would like to say that being resilient doesn't mean, and it goes especially for lawyers, being resilient doesn't mean that that person won't experience difficulties, won't experience distress. That's not real. And that will mean that such person is dissociating himself, herself from the experience. And that's not usually good news. Okay? Having said that, I don't know where this concept comes from. Do you know where this concept comes from? Any ideas why we started talking about resilience?
No.
No? Okay, in the late 70s, more or less, yes, this concept began to be talked about when it was found that some children that had been raised in really high-risk context had an adequate quality of life as adults and not the deficiencies that could be anticipated, okay? And the word, let me do this, and the word comes from resilio. This is a term that we have taken from physics, where resilience is the ability of an elastic material, let's say a rubber, as we can see in the picture, to absorb the energy and release and add the experience back to its original shape, as if the stressor has never happened. But is that what happened with us? Is that what happened with us when we are the same person after a divorce, after the death of a loved one, after the 2008 crisis? Are we going to be the same people after COVID? What do you think? Yes, no? Are we going to return like the rubber to the original shape? No, no, that's
No.
no at all. Thank you. That's why I like to think, in fact, I don't like that word, resilience. I would like to replace it with matryoshkation, because at the end of the day, it's not about going back to the previous point. It's about integrating all those experiences, like with these Russian dolls. So that would be resilience, just growing and becoming a more solid myself, and growing and getting more and more and growing through those experiences, difficult experiences. Okay, and the other thing that usually students ask me is, okay, now we know what resilience is about, now we know where this concept comes from, but now tell me, what are the most important factors of resilience? And I keep on reading all the research that comes to me, but I'm in a position to tell you that research has not answered unanimously to this question. There are different fields that are researching this, genetics, also from all the developmental sciences, psychology, anthropology, and there's not an unanimous response. In addition, what we do know is that specific factors are really weak predictors of resilience, but in self. We are complex. Humans, we are complex. So in fact, we need to take lots of factors, biological, psychological, social, cultural factors. They interact with each other, and they will determine how each of us respond to a stressful experience. But there is an exception. And the exception appears to be childhood protective factors. Those will be considered one of the most important for developing resilience as adults. There is a list of the ones that have been found, being able of asking yourself questions and giving honest answers, self-awareness, independence. This is very important because lawyers are really autonomous, and this is a good point. Capability to relate to others. This is very important because capability to relate to others goes beyond mere contact. It's about the ability to establish intimacy, to go in a deeper relationship with people. Initiative, humor, really protective factor, able of finding something funny out of one's negative situations. Creativity, morality, and self-esteem. This one is probably the basis of all the other ones. And when it comes to adults, the American Psychological Association identify 3 large groups of factors, and I usually like to add one, especially when I'm dealing with professional service firms. One would be how individuals view and engage with the world. Okay, there is a very protective factor in the fact that we look at ourselves as positive, and we look at the world as a positive place. It doesn't mean going beyond. It's really about not dwelling on negative information. It's more about looking for the opportunities in bleak situations and striving to find the positive without avoiding the negative. Okay, going back to the previous point. Secondly, definitely, of course, availability and quality of social resources. Self-awareness and self-motivation, these are really, really important ones, especially for the industry. I will mention later. There are important capabilities which can be learned through emotional intelligence, and this, being able to select the most appropriate coping strategies. Quick question, do you think we always use the best coping strategies for a situation?
No.
And why would that be?
Because they are probably the hardest. The best are the hardest. It's easier to pour a drink.
And I think it might also be a little bit of the factor, you know, this fun quote: "Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face."
Yep.
Right? Muhammad Ali, I think. So I think it's just, you're not prepared for certain situations. So it just makes it so difficult to apply maybe even learnings or tactics that you have used in the past to something that is happening to you for the very first time.
That's very true, and that's one of the main reasons. Sometimes we don't have those strategies. We never had the chance to learn it from the adults or from other people, and sometimes we collapse and we return to the previous one. Let me show you this video and tell me what you see. I'm gonna give you a brief context about it. This is the video of a Turkish woman which has been stopped by the police. She received a fine because she was driving without a seatbelt, talking on her mobile phone, without the driver's license, and without the last technical inspection. And this is her reaction. Let me see. Here we go. That continues. Why did it stop? Ah, here. Look at her. What do you see there? Do you see a woman, an adult? What do you see?
She's a great actress.
What the main question is, was it effective?
Yeah, that's a good one.
What do you see there? Do you see an adult?
No, it's a kid.
It's a kid. It's a kid reacting in the way that a kid will react if she gets something that she doesn't like. So, and now let's continue seeing her. Look at her when she does not receive the attention that she probably was receiving from the adults. I'm sorry, it goes back.
Great ringtone.
Look at her now. She doesn't receive the attention.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you can see the adult there, and you can see the woman talking over the phone and dealing with the situation. I like to use this video because sometimes when we go through difficult situations, sometimes we just collapse and we go back to strategies which are really old strategies that maybe no, for sure were useful when we were kids, or were useful when we were not partners, or they were useful in different contexts. So that's one of the things why we need to expand the coping strategies, and as Sebastian was saying, and we need to expose ourselves to situations, similar situations, so we will have the resources at a specific time. Okay, after all this general approach to resilience, what do we know about resilience and lawyers? First time I read about resilience and lawyers was back in 2002 with a really interesting article by Dr. Larry Richards. I don't know if you have read it. Yes, I'm seeing this. I highly recommend it. The title is Herding Cats. That's what the picture is for. The Herding Cats, the lawyer's personality rebel. And he used the Caliper profile personality test and investigated several hundred lawyers and managed to identify 5 common psychological traits that are due to explain many of the behaviors, funny, different, strange behaviors that we find in the legal industry, and I'm with you, and in some others industries. Let me just, you can see them all there, okay? He found lawyers to be more skeptical, a more pessimistic approach, more autonomous, with a higher sense of urgency, less sociable, Okay, and then we have to understand sociability as the ability to connect intimacy. It's not about not having many friends and not be really funny person. No, it's about contacting with people in an intimacy basis. Lawyers tend to be more common in a role-to-role situation rather than person-to-person situation, and less resilient, okay, than the general public. And according to Dr. Larry Richards, was this combination of characteristics which make lawyers really difficult to manage. And yes, I will focus only in resilience. Larry found that lawyers score only at a 30% in comparison with the general public, which score 50% on this trait. And I told you it was 2002. A few years ago, well, I have this, how do we recognize lawyers with low resilience in the work environment? Some characteristics is that they resist criticism, which is very difficult when you are looking to give feedback and to work in teams. They have difficulties dealing with anything that could lead to rejection. In my previous roles in business development was something that we have to suffer with, trying not to expose to some situations. And they react defensively to negative feedback, okay? That has been a problem, especially when it's about sharing clients' complaints, but it definitely has positive outcomes. Like all the traits that we've seen has very, very positive outcomes. And they make from lawyers very good lawyers, although it has difficulties when it comes to the situations like the one we are in now. Okay, and a couple of years ago, two professors from Luxerio Center, Emma Sirk and Marcus Hartung, they wanted to find out if things have changed since Larry Richards' research. So their research students from the law school, those students attending the international program, and some alumni with ages between 18 and 38 years old. And here are the outcomes. I'm leaving all this for later discussion, okay? First of all, young lawyers keep on being more skeptical than the general public, though they show levels of skepticism, lower levels than skepticism that the lawyers in 2002. Secondly, they found that young lawyers are less autonomous than lawyers in 2002, and they prefer working in organizations in which the direction is set. They keep on finding that they found they have a higher sociability than their predecessors, but still lower than general public. But they found they enjoy working and being with other people more than the predecessors. This one hasn't changed. In fact, young lawyers have a greater sense of urgency than lawyers before, which is a big problem. And finally, they appear to be more robust than their predecessors, okay, with a higher than average resilience score, though they have less difficulty accepting criticism, which is also interesting. So I leave this for later discussion together with a proposed roadmap to resilience, okay, for both lawyers and the organizations, working in the acceptance of the situations we cannot change, so we can focus in those that we can change, and that will link with individualism and the autonomy that lawyers like, and is one of the factors that lawyers express when they feel really satisfied with their jobs. Secondly, the power of emotions, bringing emotional intelligence in the industry, because having a higher self-knowledge allows you to deal better in difficulties. Connecting with others, a strategy to really count with others, even if you are not going to ask for the support. Just the mere fact that you know that you can count with others is a very protective factor. And a hopefully approach that's bringing higher levels of optimism into the industry. And I don't see if you can see there, but I think this is the Madrid airport. And the office is called Lost luggage office. Okay, is that similar to other airports? Probably. When you lost your luggage, you go to the lost luggage.
Yep.
Okay. If you go to Colombia, it is called delayed luggage. And this is very interesting because if it's very hard to be positive when your mind is focused on the negative outcomes, okay? And pessimistic, which is very good for lawyers to deal with contracts and to prepare their clients for the most difficult outcomes and scenarios that they cannot even think of, and the lawyer will reflect it in a contract and that will work in court. It's not good when you have to deal with situations that need from us our creativity and a different approach. Because pessimists tend to interpret the causes of negative event as stable, global, and internal. Other words, easier for everyone. This is going to last forever. It is going to undermine everything. And this is always and as always my own fault. It's very difficult to jump into creativity, and it's very difficult to ask for help, and it's very difficult to have a different approach to those situations. And something that I would like to bring and listen to all your thoughts is really, hold on, self-care. Remember, as we said at the beginning, I mean, don't lose in yourself, although the situations, internal and external, are difficult. And let me show you this. I don't know if you are a fan of this series. Can you recognize it?
It's the good, no, not the good wife, the good
Fight.
Good fight, yes.
The Good Fight. This is season 4, and she is a lawyer. And let's listen to her. She's with one of the wealthiest clients in the law firm. Here we go. Here's the conversation. So I stop here and I leave it from there, which is your selection. Family, work, friends, sleep, and exercise.
Well, would you also say, Marisa, that it's partly, we're talking about lawyers now, but it's also partly a culture thing, I would say. Yeah? Where, for instance, in Spain, you feel that in a different way than maybe in the North European countries, like my beautiful country. But people are different, I would say. Also a culture thing, and also when you look at the young lawyers, when you saw that the different, the lower. No, I didn't know what was it. Be more resilient, for instance.
Resilient.
Yeah, and I would say that's also society changes, and also young people change because they are in another way educated in a different way, I would say, and they grow up with more technology, and so they have a different approach to society, I would say.
The expectations are different. I read that a lot of law firms are already preparing themselves for the Gen Y generation, because they are taking over, and then they have totally different priorities, expectations. And one of it is that they don't want to have those 2,200 billable hours per year, which is 1,800 to 2,200 at Lethan and Watkins and so on. It's the norm, but you call it 8 hours per day just billing. It's unimaginable. So the new generation, they are not going to
I would say the balance would be different. I agree on that, Holger. I'm not sure, because I have in the Netherlands also a lot of discussion in those generations changing. I don't see those change within lawyers, I must say, the new lawyers, because the students we got, I worked at a law firm, and the students we got from the university, which were fresh, they were much more conservative than a lawyer who worked at that law firm for 20 years, for instance, which is much more business savvy. They were raised at the university in a very conservative style to fit in that box, I would say. And that's still the case. So partly generation changes, but the impact is not that large on legal students, I would say.
So they have been preconditioned, so to say.
Yeah, that's it. So they I mean, they have to fit in that box, which we call lawyer, and that for 100 years now. That's not maybe the case, but yeah. How do you see that, Marisa?
Well, I have my ideas. I mean, this study is we are still reviewing it and checking it, but going to my students, sometimes I find they are more resilient also because they are not as committed to spend their lives there. So that's why they're more, they have a higher acceptance of criticism. They are more used first. And secondly, because I'm not planning to stay here as a partner. So I really get what you have to tell me and I will grow over that. So that could be also some other reason for that higher. But I would like to stress something which is very important, and I haven't said that, and it's in Larry Richards' article, which is that those characteristics I show you are very relevant, especially between what he calls the service partners, in opposition to the rainmakers. Okay, rainmakers, no, really optimistic. Rainmakers, I don't know. I mean, I've worked with rainmakers, and they're with the clients, and they say, "Oh, yes, we can do that," and then you have to be there saying, "No, we cannot. The law prevents us from doing that." So, and the same. I mean, not autonomous at all. They really like to work with other people because they're very aware of their weaknesses. I found that rainmakers have higher degrees of emotional intelligence. So they know themselves better. And because they know themselves better, they know they need to count with other people to fulfill this place where they don't get in. And they feel more strong. They feel stronger, sorry. So that's something very important to this study. This study reflects service partner, but so the good thing is to combine all of them, to combine the rainmaker with the service partner that will tell you a wait, I'm identifying the risks.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Yep. So thank you, Marisa. Very interesting. And let's go over to Jeroen and Sebastian.
Sebastian is sharing the screen.
Can you see my screen already?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it my browser or my entire screen?
No, it's a browser.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, Jeroen, we have together prepared this board here. Coming back just quickly to the quote that I mentioned, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I wrongly attributed that to Muhammad Ali. I think it was Mike Tyson. Thanks to Google, quick search, revealed that. So just a picture on here.
But they are similar. They are similar.
So nicely to that, Marisa.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would like to make this a bit of a more conversational piece between us. So we have not prepared a presentation, just some conversation starter material. So everybody, feel free to engage here and let us know your thoughts. So what we thought to maybe start with is to take a quick look and zoom in to where are we currently, and what is the current situation. And there have been plenty of models out there, I think, in terms of the phases that we might go through. I hope you can read that all right here. I've zoomed in a bit. We don't need to read the text in a lot of detail, but I think we all feel where we are. The pandemic is not under control just yet. I think we're probably, and fittingly to the theme of our discussion here today, in that resilience phase. So as it's described here, courtesy of some of my KPMG colleagues, infections continue to rise, but lockdown measures are proving effective at slowing the rate. So there's a very evident economic impact in practically all countries. Definitely a dramatic picture. Unemployment rates are still not developing very favorably, and companies are at least taking stock of the crisis. I think some industries are obviously hit harder than others, and maybe some, and especially professional services, have fared comparatively well still through that, and are already starting to look beyond the current situation. And I think that's probably one of the very interesting aspects for us to discuss in the next couple of minutes as well. How do we deal with the current situation, but also what are the phases that are ahead of us, and what can we start doing now to also thrive and become a more resilient organization that might be able to cope with future situations or some of the other uncertainties that we're also facing, you know, be it Brexit or what will happen once the US elections are actually coming to a new result. So there's still probably a ton of surprises out there for us where firms need to prove their resilience. So we've just collected here a couple of statistics that I hope are helpful to get us started again. So I found this one in HBR regarding how knowledge workers are spending their time, comparing data from 2013 to 2020 during COVID-19 lockdown. So you can see that the way we work is obviously changing. There's less managing across, more desk-based work, not a surprise, I guess. Interestingly, more externally facing work. And so there's probably a ton of theories we can discuss behind those statistics. I don't want to go into all the details right now, but I'm just saying, okay, I think the way work is being done in professional service firms is probably changing as well. One maybe side note here also picks up on what Marisa talked about, individual resilience. So I found this one here to be also quite intriguing. The number of people rated highly resilient by number of COVID-19 related work changes. So interestingly, those that experience a lot of work changes seem to build up resilience. So there seems to be also a bit of a training effect. I don't know, Marisa, what your thoughts are on that, but to me, this could lead to a hypothesis that as management and leadership, it is important to actually take action, even if that means change for your workers, but it's better to do that than nothing, and overall it increases the resilience even on an individual level. What do you think, Marisa?
Yes, now I thought I had the microphone on. Yes, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, but I think it's also because psychologists, we are expecting what we call the third wave. So the point is that now we are in that tunnel that you were mentioning in the previous graph. And the good news is that we are many in that tunnel. It's not that we are only a few and the rest are outside. That is helping us. And so we will see. I'm looking forward to see what is going to happen, but we'll, psychologist Isabel, hello. But we are expecting bad situations, and maybe this could be dealing, and I think that law firms and managers should be aware of that people is under a stressful situation for a very long time, and that's always bad news. It's bad news for health as well. So let's see what happens, but I understand that this could be also seen from that point of view, that we are all together. And especially, I would like to look at this research, because it will depend on the industry that has been hidden. Sometimes if you are seeing around you that things are not that good, you see why, I mean, I'm not in the Titanic, I'm in one of the boats. So yes, I will look at it. I think it's very interesting, Sebastian.
Okay, so then just, I don't want to go through all of these statistics. I think what's interesting is, so I attended Richard Chaplin's Managing Partners Forum in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and he does a survey among professional service firms, and you can really see how, not surprisingly, I would say, the focus by leaders has changed, especially when it comes to their focus on operational efficiency. So that pressure has obviously increased. And I think in general, we could, I think we can probably expect that even some of the business challenges that we have seen before will probably be even amplified going forward, especially when I compare, this graphic here on the left, which talks about major business challenges for professional service firms, and also how industries in general might change and how leaders expect changes. So naturally, you could almost look at it, okay, so these are challenges of professional service firms, and over here you see what's happening in general, so also with their clients. And I think we can see that there are definitely parallels, and we all feel that, right? So we have seen over the past couple of months that it is obviously possible to not be on site with clients. So, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a consultant, my background, and typically consultants spend most of their time on site with clients, even though that's mostly not possible. We have been able to continue largely as normal in our business. So it is obviously possible to change those interactions. It is possible to deliver mostly through technology and not just being somewhere on site. And going virtual has not just meant that we are switching cameras on, but it has really dramatically changed how the work is being done, how the work is distributed across the firm. You don't necessarily have those bottlenecks in terms of talent availability at a certain location for a certain day. I mean, an expert can only visit so many people in one day, but through Zoom calls, team calls, etc., you can probably visit a lot more. So I think that we will probably see a lot of this price pressure. There have been some reports around that as well. A lot of firms are reporting that, and obviously changing buyer behavior that has been there before is reportedly accelerating at the moment.
I see, to add to that, Sebastian, I see COVID as some kind of technology pressure cooker. Before COVID, a lot of lawyers were not able to work good with technology, or were afraid with technology, and that's part of the educational system also. When I look in the Netherlands, they're not raised with technology, so they partly afraid for technology. And within COVID, they had to use technology, because then your job can't be done, also for the partners. So there's a more open mind to technology, and even enforced by their clients, I would say. We get later to that. But if you look to the larger corporate legal departments, they enforce their law firms or their panel firms to be more reluctant to technology, and also from a price point of view, but also to serve them better, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that pressure cooker comparison is a really nice one. So I'm anxiously awaiting the results of our survey this year, which we postponed a little bit compared to the previous more than a decade, I think, that we have done that. KPMG Harvey Nash survey, which looks at how technology is being used across different industries. And we have a very large segment for professional services, business services in there as well. And I found this slice to be very interesting last year because basically almost half of the firms reported that they see dramatic change to their primary business activity. And you would need to go into the survey and the actual questions that were being asked to understand that radical or major change really translates into delivering different services, different products. So definitely changing what you do. And so they feel that there is dramatic change happening. And probably you have also seen one form or another of this graphic. Probably every single consulting firm on the planet came out with something like that, that looked at how companies have fared during the before, during, and in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and looked at which factors might explain that some have been doing so much better than others. So one takeaway obviously was that there are those firms that have continued to invest, for example, during the crisis, that have clearly taken action, that have shifted, that have induced changes to their markets, their services, their products, and they have fared comparatively well. So I think right now we are definitely again in a situation where we have to say it is a very good idea to re-examine where you stand in the market, where you're going, and to make changes and make adjustment, and do not count on things going back to normal and you being able to improve or improve your current market situation without major changes. So, I would, in the interest of time, I would like to just say, I think overall, it is clear that the competitive landscape is changing for most professional service firms, be it law firms, be it consulting, accounting, tax advisory. We see alternative players in most market segments rising. We see clients asking for different delivery modes, delivery models. I found a very interesting study that looked specifically at risk and compliance related services, which very often take place at the intersection of law firms, accounting work, and consulting work, so all play in that area. And clients were asked how would they like these services to be performed, in which kind of business model. Do they still want to basically pay for their traditional projects, engagements, and the expertise, or would they like other business models? And there were a couple of choices, and the interesting and overwhelming fact was that most clients want those services to be delivered as managed services or business processes as a service, and they see that even shifting in the future towards more automated service delivery models, technology-based delivery models. So I think there is a very strong appetite for a lot of services to be delivered in a different way and in a different business model.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also what I saw, I'm sorry, Sebastian, what I also saw in my market, I was head of consultancy entity of a large law firm in Amsterdam, and also head of innovation. And we started that consultancy entity, which was not quite normal in the legal market in the Netherlands 6 years ago, because we saw the demand, and I think it's very clear now after the crisis also, for a broader service package for, now we especially helped corporate in-house departments with, for instance, embracing technology within those corporate in-house departments. So helping general counsel to in their change, not only with technology, but with procedures, or bringing better tools in place or better advice in place. And there was a much bigger demand. First, we had the early adapters. We started with Nike in all of Europe, and it developed to much more clients who had that skill set. and or that demand, not skill set, but demand. It did become very slowly, but you saw now that lawyers and law firms in general, I would say, are much more open to a broader skill set to bring on table, because lawyers don't have that skill set when you look at consultancy or advice in changing processes or bringing in technology. And you see after, we're still in the pandemic situation, but you see still, you already see, and also with my clients, I'm a advisor to corporate in-house at this moment, that they're much more open to focus on their processes. For instance, when you look at what is my commodity part in that, and how can a law firm help me with that, solving that part, and putting, for instance, technology in place combined with legal knowledge, and not my own people in place, to be much more efficient, for instance, in that. And that's I would say we were very, very early with that proposition, but after COVID, I would say, and also currently, clients are much more open to this kind of services. But it's quite difficult for law firms to respond to that, because they don't have the right people in house, and so they have to collaborate with other kind of firms, I would say, or other kind of companies.
Yeah, but that's a great intro, Jeroen. Thank you to what we would like to look at. So, what are the things that professional service firms, law firms in particular, maybe here in this discussion, can do to become more resilient, to deal with this situation as it stands today and the changes that we expect going forward? So this is the part where we would like to make this really a dialogue with all of you. And this is just a bit of a predefined framework here to just have something to categorize our different angles and ideas a little bit. Jeroen, why don't you take a first step at it? What do you think are some of the things that legal service providers need to do to improve their resilience in the current situation and going forward?
What you almost hear from lawyers when you talk about innovation, for instance, they say, "Oh, in the future, I want to be a trusted advisor." Mostly, I say then to that lawyer, if you want to be a trusted advisor, you have to understand your clients and the challenges of your clients. And then not only the legal challenges that those clients have. For instance, what is the position of a general counsel in that? And how can we answer or to see, to shine more within his company? And so when you look at clients, help them, for instance, a simple example to that is what we did is, when you look at reporting, mostly a general counsel is reporting to a CFO. And when he's reporting, he's only reporting based on what is my outside spend of a law firm, but only to that. And there are much more challenges, or much more propositions you could take in that. In, for instance, look at your work. What is your process in that? What is your risk appetite within your work? How does we have to change, for instance, in some countries, that risk appetite? So you get much more seen, I would say, from through your board. When you change it around, when you look from a law firm perspective, help your clients with that. Put in different skill set of people, project managers, but also consultants, as I am. The challenges we have to take in that market is, I'm an example to that. We had a consultancy entity, but it was forbidden by the Dutch bar, because it's not allowed to have a consultancy entity as a law firm. So there are also, on the regulation side, some challenges to take. That's culture, I would say, because not to be open and flexible, like Marisa said, to that change. The regulators are not very flexible. They're always behind to the society, I would say. And there are a lot of proof in the market where we could add a lot of value into that as a law firm, but also as a client. And I always take a good quote from we had a few years ago Daniel Katz over in Amsterdam, and he did a talk for students we invited, and he said, when you look at the innovation, for instance, innovation will not come from law firms at all. It will come from their clients, and that's what I see currently in the Dutch market. And law firms are not really what's the good English word for that? Coping with that. So hiring different people than they normally do. They're still when you look at the Dutch market, it's still very focused on the hourly rate and not on products or helping their clients. So it's and I hope and that this pandemic, and it's a good thing about this pandemic, changing this mindset. Is someone else seeing this change also because of COVID?
Jeroen, I would like to add something to what you're saying. Last week we had this roundtable with partners with law firms and in-house lawyers. And one of the in-house lawyers said something about this. It's like, yes, we're keen to see all the innovations and all the things that you are thinking about. But before that, we will do the PCR test. It's the same in your countries, this PCR?
Yeah.
Hey, in Spain fits perfectly because deadlines in Spain is plazos. So it's PCR. That stands for deadlines, cost, and risk. As long as we keep on covering this, which is they were before COVID, and now gets more important. And after that, we can get engaged in the other conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Yeah. Anyone else?
We have a question in the chat from Ronald, and Ronald, you can unmute your mic and probably ask it directly.
Yeah, thanks, Holger. Yes, I'm not a lawyer, but I have connections with some of you. With Sebastian, we are close following each other's topics, and I've spoken with Jeroen several times, and so I'm more of the black swan in this community. I think I'm having an outside view. I think you're talking a lot about, and what Jeroen said about trusted advisor, what Sebastian is talking about and has written about quite lengthily, is if we lose the word law and we take this from a professional services company, there's a lot of common in what is happening for years already in consulting. And one of the issues, being a consultant by heart, and I've preached a lot of years, let's say, small changes and small step changes. 1.5 years ago, I came to the conclusion that we talk about, as consultants, we talk a lot about disruption or change. We're not disrupting our own business model per se. Mm-hmm. So if we talk about one of the big anchors, I think, both in classical consulting business as well as in law, is the rate card. And we are too connected to the governance model we have for years, and we are too connected and too, let's say, sea-anchored almost to the rate card model. And if we don't lose and don't get rid of the rate card model and the classical hours times tariff model, then we don't scale. Because if you do that, you only can scale with more people. And that's always the risk if you don't have the right people, or if you can't attract the right people, or if you can't keep the right people. So if you take this from a pure technology perspective, then the solution is very simple. It's basically automation. And that's why we have cloud now, because cloud is providing the automation and the scale. So if we want to, let's say, take a sort of transition into a cloud from a professional services perspective, then we need to do this internally different, both from a automation perspective as well as from a governance perspective. And so I don't believe that the C anchors are, let's say, weak enough to disconnect a company now to make the transition in a big change. These C anchors, these lines are too strong. So what I've been preaching a year now almost is more of a reset model. And instead of making small step changes, make every 7th year a big change. Basically reset the whole company in total, instead of making small changes. Then you have the ability to use as much as possible of the present technologies in the present governance model and the present business model and the questions the customers have and so on, instead of making small changes and then, not being fast enough, not being cheap enough, being hijacked by competition who is smaller, is more nimble, is more, let's say, well-funded even. So that was my contribution to today's topic, I think, for now at least.
Thank you, Ronald. I know your position in this discussion. I think it's quite difficult to. I know why you're saying this, but it's quite difficult for the legal industry. I would say it's a very long shot, and maybe if you are in the B&B space, it's much more difficult when you're in the B and C space. Then it's much more easier to reinvent yourself. That's what you're saying. Every 7 years. You have to understand that the legal industry never reinvent themselves. There was no necessary efforts to reinvent themselves. They're doing 115 years the same thing, I would say.
Exactly.
And they still earned a lot of money, I would say. And currently they do, even in the pandemic situation, because when I look at turnover in the legal space in the Netherlands, it's still great. When you compare it to the US market, it's different. So they don't feel the pain to reinvent themselves. And that's quite difficult, I would say.
Yeah.
I know the position, Jeroen, and I'm correct with that. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that there is no necessity or no possibility to make a change.
Sure.
That's correct. What I see is that the legal industry, because it is still working, and as Jeroen mentioned, it is still working very well. Generally, it's probably what I read at minus 20% revenues, but it's still they're making money and making good money. So they see the business model set in stone. So if you look at the what Ronald said, the bottleneck in scalability, you say, okay, we don't solve it with changing the business model. We are changing the price for the service because we see it as an problem of diminished supply. So we have to change the price, and then it will level out. But never touch the business model, because it's working. We are making money with it. So why should we change it? But I fully agree. It has to change, because it's not going to continue like this. And it took a pandemic to make lawyers realize they can work remotely, and they can advise clients remotely. Unbelievable a year ago.
I'm sorry, Konstantinos, go.
Thanks a lot. My point of view is that so for instance, there is a reason why the legal industry adapted so fast during the pandemic, is that despite being a very close-minded and traditional sector, you only need 2-3 things to operate. You need the laptop, you need an email account, and you need a mobile carrier. So that's pretty much it. I mean, regardless whether you're a solo practitioner or a 10 people law firm or 100 people law firm, 100 people law firm might be more complicated, but if you go to small, medium, solo practitioners, then, I would say without even knowing that, we could adapt very fast because we don't have extreme capital. We don't have the location is not necessary for our job. And since I'm a lawyer too, I mean, you know, I barely noticed that we have a lockdown.
Well, that's all true. That's all true, but it's not a technical issue or challenge. It's a mental challenge, or it's a organizational challenge.
True. I mean,
just as an I love to bring up this instance because it shows like how slowly lawyers are ready to adapt, and if they are forced to, how quickly they can. In Russia, they have a very sophisticated system for the commercial court system, electronic filing and so on. Everything is available online, and they had for 10 years now in the system. They had the opportunity to do online court sessions, but they never used it. It was just like if you discover after 10 years in a menu of Microsoft Word something you do by hand, you could do automatically. They just didn't use it. And a year ago, if you would have told,
I know we have the same thing in Greece. But what I'm saying is that probably these are two different discussions. One is how you can be resilient, or why the legal industry has been so resilient. And the other discussion is how to innovate within the industry. So I would say these are two different discussions.
Yeah, that's right. But when you look at, you say, okay, with the legal industry is adapting. I don't see that very fast, but I would say their clients are changing much more faster than the law firms are adapting, I would say. And that's where you see a lot of alternative service providers standing up. When I look at the Dutch legal industry, they're all afraid of the company of Sebastian and the other competitors. This is what's happening. And that's quite different than the last 75 years, let's say it that way. But and that's a major change. So when you look at service delivery, for instance, when you look at Big Four, it's quite different than an average law firm, I would say, here in the Netherlands. And the demands of service delivery are quite different also. I'm looking at corporates now, not the mid-market and the lower market, but when you look at corporates, they're much more demanding than they were previously, I would say. And that will enforce them. And then you can't get away with only a laptop and a telephone and maybe you have some internet or a modem.
And I think, Jeroen, what you're describing is what we see with the large players in the market, right? There is a significant investment readiness, I would say, or even investments that are happening. Some have happened before the pandemic. Others have had to invest right now because, you know, all the shortcomings that you may have had before, you really need to pay for right now because there's no other way to do business at the moment unless you can enable a remote virtual workforce, unless you can enable virtual engagement models and all that. So that is certainly happening. So, you know, if I would like to turn our conversation maybe to some really practical ingredients here again. I mean, what are some of the implications of what we discussed? I think technology is fortunately getting a lot more accessible. So, you know, on the data and technology side, I would like to say, I mean, moving to the cloud with your systems, with the tools that you provide professionals with, to me is absolutely foundational. Jeroen, when we thought about what we would put on here, we both quickly thought about citizen development, right? Low code, no code tools. Yeah. To me, these are some of the ingredients which are really proving their worth at the moment, because they are enabling professionals to work in a different way. So those investments are really paying off double at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to elaborate on that, because maybe it's interesting to get Alex's opinion, because he is a director of a startup in the Netherlands based on AI and RPA. What he sees about the demands of law firms and the clients of their law firms. Did you hear me, Alex?
Yeah, I just was looking for the unmute button.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, can you repeat the question, please, Jeroen?
Sebastian was saying, okay, you see a much when you look at technology, which was years ago quite difficult to access. You needed consultants, a lot of power, which was not within law firms, for instance, and it's much more easier accessible, like low and no code kind of tools. You're selling a product based on AI, but you're selling a product which is quite easy to use for lawyers to use within their companies, and not a box which written on in it AI and nobody knows what's in it. But it's quite easy to use, and you're using RPA tools to serve your clients better in creating better processes within law firms or insurance companies, and to that.
That's correct.
Did you see that change lately in maybe in the pandemic area, that clients and law firms are much more open to that because it's easier to use and they don't have a big team on that, or a big external team on that?
Well, you can definitely see a change in the market, in my opinion. There's still a need for tools, if it's no code or low code or RPA, or it's all about working more efficient. Especially what you see right now is that a lot of lawyers are working from home. They still need to do the process, and it's difficult to go to the office and, well, do it on the old-fashioned way, just to print out and work through the work that has been done in the practice that they are working in. So, and for ourselves, the reason that we chose for a secondary platform to deliver services to our clients, and especially also outside of the law firms, but within the legal space. So where we can combine our own platform together with other platforms to help with that process that they are looking for. So all the manual stuff that is still done in a lot of businesses, we can automate it, and we can use our own product to make it easier. And it's, well, just like you say, it's all about user usability, and instead of the old days that when the AI hype was around, everybody wanted it. Everybody started with it, but it didn't work, in our opinion. So, and you see that also, and there are a lot of cases that they invested a lot of money in it, but it's still the business is not satisfied about it, and we approach it just differently, and we use proven technology. And yes, we use also algorithms to enhance the data, but in the end, the engine that we built is it's just IT, and it's delivering what the client needs.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I think those
that's answering your question a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Really great points. And by the way, I think you mentioned a couple of interesting ones that may have slipped or could slip through if we don't capture it. I think so. You spoke about partners that you're working with, right? So I think that's actually a really critical element for law firms in general, professional service firms, to think more in innovation partnerships, but also, delivery partnerships. So I think the operations of any professional service firm will be significantly affected going forward. So to give you a very hands-on example, most professional service firms, I would say, have a pretty large share of the work that needs to be done to deliver a client service that they have in-house through their own capabilities. What is not so common is to employ subcontractors, work with vendors that are an integral part of your service delivery. So very often they are just, suppliers to, let's say, an IT system or something like that. They're not necessarily integrated in the front office client delivery work, but we see that changing right now. One interesting example is the whole rise of the contingent workforce element, especially in the larger firms, where they increasingly keep specialists, let's say, on call, or have work with networks of specialists or through platforms where some of those spot buy demands can be met very efficiently. And I think that is a major change to the operations, because it's a different game than keeping your own people busy and utilized.
Yeah,
But actually,
maybe to add, sorry, Sebastian, maybe to add another great example to that. In the Netherlands, we have the development team of Rainencourt, for instance. Rainencourt is a very big platform, and what you see there is that the large law firms are investing large sums of money in that startup. This week there was news that there's a Japanese large law firm who's investing in that. Clifford Chance does, and many more. And what is that? It's a collaboration platform where there's an ecosystem behind, where law firms can easily use a lot of products, the product of Alex or other startups in the ecosystem, like you're using apps in the App Store of Apple, and that's also a great development. I think at this moment only for the larger law firms who can pay that kind of money, but it's an interesting development that larger law firms directly invest in those kind of bigger startups, and they already got a large sum of money, I would say, to create a better service delivery and also for their own law firm, but also for their clients within a platform. And that's an interesting development. But yeah, it's currently only the very large law firms.
And I think one other element maybe on the client side here again as well, because after all, that's what we want to focus on, right? I think experience management, which is really a bit of a buzzword maybe these days that's being tossed around, but I think it is interesting to discuss it in our context, because let's say that the quality of a service very often is hard to judge. Are you really getting the best advice or not? But what probably most people and most clients can definitely make a call on is, so is the collaboration actually pleasant? Is it easy to do this with that firm? Is it easy to collaborate, to exchange information, to see the work progressing? Just like when you hang up on a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams meeting, you get those star ratings, right? So how was the call quality today? I think we don't have that mechanism in place with most service providers today to ask, okay, so how did that conversation with your lawyer go just now? But maybe it is time that we wake up to getting points of measurement in place, maybe not that exact one that I just suggested, but to test the water. So how is that working? And that is actually happening with some of the professional service marketplaces and platforms. They are starting to give their clients that have procured a legal service or a consulting service through the platform, they're asking them for that feedback. So how did that go? Or they provide them with tools during the delivery to see, okay, so how well is that going along the way? And so to me, I think that is a very interesting capability to start building up, because it allows you to stay in tune with your clients and how those demands are changing and how that expectations are changing.
It's quite difficult in the legal culture to do that, but I call that A/B testing of your legal services. That's what you should do. But then you also had to do with a difficult thing, and Maria pointed also on that, to receive critical reactions of your client, and that's quite difficult for a lawyer, I would say. But I think it's very important to do those kind of A/B testing of your services, or if it is a traditional law lawyer, but also to legal services.
And sharing their complaints. That's very important. First step to.
Yeah.
Yes. Sebastian, may I add something to the people and culture?
Of course.
Sure.
I only have 2 squares, right? Okay. Let's get into there. 2 very important things: well-being culture and emotional intelligence. They've been always important, but now, and this morning I was reading, there's been a research here in Spain, asking students in the very last years of law school which were their plans, and surprisingly, most of them, they wanted to become civil servant rather than entering a law firm or starting their own business. And only 3 out of 10, they wanted to join a law firm. I think that's really big problem. And when you get into there, because my first thought was, this is about safety, civil servant safety, but not, it's not about that. It's mainly about they're looking again for this work-life balance, and they're trying to escape from those situations they don't feel comfortable. And that leads me again, because I will need another square, which is helping people to deal with stress. At the end, stress is just is the result of a very easy equation. Threats being higher than the resources that you think you have. And even if the threat is perceived as very, very high, there's no way you can, if you are there in the beach, waiting for the wave in the southeast, during the, what's the name, the tsunami? If you're feeling like that, there's no way you will start thinking what you can do. The fear will just fill in all the possibilities. So yes, resilience training, helping them that the stress, it's very good. I mean, we couldn't be waking up in the mornings without stress. We will be dead without stress. But dealing with stress, playing with stress, dancing with stress. But for that, the companies, the law firms need to create the right conditions. The partners, the daddies, the fathers and the mothers in the law firm need to show and display those skills as well. And teaching them, allowing them to express this. And so I will definitely include that to increase resilience and to have people, because if they are all moving into different industries, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We need to move to machines just because there's no other alternative. Let's do automation.
So you mean not only to precondition them to stress, but to cope with the stress.
Yes, how to cope with the stress. I tell them, I mean, I embrace stress. Without the stress, we wouldn't be doing a lot of things, especially lawyers. Just remember, I told you we have a high sense of urgency. It means that we become really, really clever when the deadlines approach. I don't know about you, but it's something that I keep from my former life as a lawyer. I don't panic. I get so clever. The best ideas.
Yeah, I only function under pressure. I can relate to this.
But it has to be something that you can do in that period of time. I always tell my students, I mean, you can, I don't know, prepare a report, but you cannot do, like, I don't know, your research for your PhD functioning under a high sense of urgency.
But do they want stress in the first place? It sounds like some old guy talking about the younger generation, but I always have the impression that the younger generation, they don't want the stress. But you on the other hand, Jeroen, I said that the universities, they are preconditioning them to the same patterns in a law firm, in a legal department. You have to, there will be stress, and just probably without giving them any tools into the hand, and say, okay, there will be stress, there will be 2,000 billable hours per year expected from you, but here you use the tool set how you can cope with that. Or they just precondition that, no, that's not, it's too stressy, let's go to take a job in the European Union in Brussels and have a good life.
I understand it the same way I told you. I mean, the threat I mean, it's really big. There is a threat, and there's a lot of things that will happen. So let's see things from the other side. There's nothing we can do for that, especially nowadays. I mean, all this remote work is killing people. I mean, because they don't have the resources. I've been teaching. I have to teach things like, please leave your mobile phones outside the bedroom, or really, because cortisol won't help you to have a nice sleep. If you don't have a nice sleep, then things will be going worse day after day. And then is when they collapse, and then when all this. So I think it's a question of education. It's a question of really helping them to understand what can be done, what cannot be done. It's like this very nutritive father, when you help your children, because there are many things that they don't know. But my question is whether the partners know about this. So sometimes they cannot teach it because they don't know about this.
It's a skill.
It's a skill.
It's a skill of handling stress.
Training.
And if everything was going okay and there was lots of success and there is no disappointment, then you think you're on a sort of nice trajectory of success. And if you then have to handle dysfunctioning, have to handle with disappointment, and have to handle a large amount of stress, and you're not used to how to do this, then you probably are in deep pain. And I think that there is a whole generation which grew up more or less, and we oversimplifying it. I'm oversimplifying it now, obviously, but in a way, there's a whole generation which is successful, with not too much pain, has education, has lots of holidays, and suddenly everything is taken away. Freedom of movement, freedom of choice in a way. So there is how to cope with this bigger disappointment thing. That's a big thing for years already. Now it's compressed, it's pressure cooked. And it's a very nasty thing.
Yes.
Guys, I like to end our session because we all extended our time. Maybe to finalize, we have sales and business development. Any suggestions to that? So we get our whole our schema full with suggestions. I would be happy. So,
I mean, I think there's a discipline that is a bit neglected, possibly in professional services, but that has become known as growth hacking. I think it is interesting in these days if you look at that. I mean, it's mostly also a bit to your A/B testing point, but in the business development world, right, where you try to just try out, okay, what messaging works. Go on social, sell via LinkedIn. Is it possible? Is absolutely possible, because which other way is there today to build a relationship with someone new, right? Yeah. You need to do it from your desk. So, and I think it works. I mean, I have deep respect for Ronald, and we have had great conversations via LinkedIn commentary already prior to being on this call here together. And I think it is a neglected discipline, as are the digital sales channels in many firms. I think we see, maybe back to the generational shift, we see that happening. I mean, there's an ever younger workforce these days. Some of them are buyers in the procurement department of large corporates, for example, that will be involved in the selection of a professional service provider. And they want clarity. They want a configuration for your service. And some firms have responded, and it's working. I mean, we have had many debates within KPMG whether we actually want to go down that road, but we took the plunge and started to put configuration areas on our homepage where you can go in and configure yourself a service. You change 2 parameters and you get a clear price and you can get that service. So it is doable, and I think it is definitely powerful, and it can give you some of that resilience, because this is actually something that you can start testing just like a software company would when launching a product. It allows you to directly interact with your buyers and get feedback. Will they click the buy button or not?
Yeah, that would be interesting. One of the points I see is that lawyers still see their what they're doing as a skill, but they have to see it more as a product. But product is a dirty word for a lawyer, I would say. And if it's a product, it's much more scalable, and they could sell it on a very different way than. When you compare to my country, for instance, 15 years ago, it was not allowed by a lawyer to make an advertisement in an ad in a magazine. It was not allowed. So they come from a very far way to be commercial active, and we do a lot of training skill sets on being commercial or using LinkedIn in a good sense. But it's quite difficult for them, and I experienced that to be head of a consultancy entity, and we said, okay, we have some great products for your client. But then they said, okay, but when we sell those products, it will kill my workforce, what I'm doing for them now in an hourly rate sense. So there's a lot of afraidness for those kind of products, but that's the only way to go, I would say. And but yeah.
And Sebastian, I will add something there. It will be debriefings from clients, but debriefings with 2 conditions. First, active listening, and secondly, a real commitment to action, to take action.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That would be, again, about listening and really having a proper conversation.
Yeah, I've added that here. Listen to clients, debriefings, commitment to take action. Fully agree. To me, that's also, part of why I mentioned the experience management part. I mean, why are we clicking those 3, 4, 5 stars or sometimes 1 star? Because we actually believe it makes a difference. And we know that a lot of the service providers that are behind these tools that we're using every day now are actually listening to that and want to improve and work on their service. And we are very interested in that service getting better because we rely on it today. And I think the same is true for professional services in many cases. A lot of those services that firms provide are very critical. So it's critically important to improve that service and ask for how to improve it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we have to round it up. Thank you for participating in this very interesting discussion also. It was a very different way than doing normal presentations, I would say. But see that's very lively also. So that, I liked it.
I liked it very much. We further on, we should limit all webinars to 10 people because we get a lively discussion out of it.
Yeah.
Very
trailblazers here.
Yeah.
Guys, can you please share the link to the Miro board if that's possible? Because
sure, I will.
Jeroen, it's your board, I think.
Yeah.
So you can share that.
Okay. All right, then let's wrap it up. And thank you very much, Marisa, Sebastian, and Jeroen for your very, very interesting insights, and for the other guys for participating actively in the discussion. And I hope you see you soon at another webinar of ELTA. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.